Here we are on the third turn of Time of Wars. I had kind of resolved, hey, come down, just do all the beginning stuff. That should be mostly mechanical at this point. But, of course, I ran into a problem. Although I used the Letter of Majesty card, and it's not, well, it's not in my hand, so I can't play it. I wanted to look, I wasn't sure I had, I thought maybe I held it, but I wanted to look at the 30 Years War card. So I look at this, and first of all, yes, it requires the Letter of Majesty. I knew that from the other one. But what I didn't know is play during game turn 3 or 4 in order to start a war with the Reich. Moreover, after playing this card, you're allowed to suppress the revolt in Praha. Special rules on the backside of the space religion chart. That'll be this, which has, yeah, I sort of ignored all this. But one of the biggies is I get victory points for increasing domination of the Reich. That's why I want to do this. Number of forces come into play. The fact that I discarded the Letter of Majesty probably means I'm not going to get this. I'm not going to pay a fund to draw that card, but I wanted to look at the card, therefore I have a reshuffle that I have to deal with. But I would basically have to have a reshuffle and get both cards next turn for this to have any effect anymore. And, okay, so like with Paths of Glory, where you absolutely have to know the cards to make history come out at all like it did, here, again, you have to know that this only works on turn 3 and 4, and that you have to really organize for it. Now, it's useful that there are rules for the 30 Years War on the back of here. I'm a little iffy on the concept of the Habsburgs trying, I mean, they sort of did, trying to provoke the war so that, I'm trying to remember what it was, but essentially the bull that, had already kind of settled things, was dissolved, and they could try to take full control of the empire. I guess it's reasonable. It is reasonable that they would orchestrate it for their own desires. On the other hand, well, it's 3 victory points. That's a lot, but am I doing all that well otherwise? I'm not far from automatic victory. So it might be worth continuing to pursue a policy of attacking something. I don't know what. Because the Ottomans don't hold any more keys. I could hunt down... Who is it? I've got this one conquered. But they're not... Whoa, they're not allied with me? Fuck, I thought they were. Oh, son of a bitch. I think I screwed up. I think they should be allied with me. And that this would be the only one I could go to war with. We're back down the rabbit hole. So I look into this, and Michael the Brave, which was the thing that triggered Bucharest there, place Commander Michael the Brigade Brave with all units of Wallachian units in Bucharest. Wallachia is not war against the Ottomans. Moreover, you must apply special rule number 2 from Grand Campaign. Well, now I don't remember that, but I don't see anything that allies them. And special rule number 2 does create alliances for the other powers. Now I'm lost because I'm not sure what it means for a minor country to have declared war without an alliance, and obviously I played it as if there was a fucking alliance, moving in there, relieving the siege and all that. So now I have to try to understand what the fuck is going on there. And I suspect it's supposed to create an alliance. And just doesn't say it, but so I could have declared war. According to the sequence, no. There's something that deals with this, and I don't know where the fuck it is. So, yeah, what I thought was going to be a nice little mechanical action turns out to be, again, a did I fuck up? I don't know. The rules, the cards, they aren't specific enough to tell me. So now I have to puzzle this all out. And I'm really getting fucking frustrated here. You know? I keep thinking, well, I'm getting close enough that I can play this fucker on autopilot, at least to some extent. Maybe not get things right. Maybe not get the 30 Years' War to happen because I didn't know it can only happen on turns 3 and 4. And I'm really considering, I'm really kind of regretting my decision to not play the Letter of Majesty, because I've got the Ottomans so fucking beaten up that I can probably hold them in check and engage in the 30 Years' War. But again, I don't know how good my leaders are. One interesting thing that I wanted to point out is that your leaders don't go away until after the sequence of play. And I may, I'm sure I mentioned the order of play, but funds gathering and card drawing are based on your old leader, along with, retention from the last turn and whatever. So the ruler's changing doesn't happen until then. You have the old leader for the cards that you draw. So, for additional cards, whatever. But now I'm stuck in the cards drawing phase with a question that's probably going to take me quite some time to answer. I can't find anything. So the rules as written would be that Michael the Brave shows up in Bucharest and no one controls him. And the Ottomans can attack him. I don't know what happens. Anybody can throw defensive cards on him because you're allowed to throw them on someone. But he's not allowed to take any actions. And I don't think he'd be allowed to make withdrawal choices. There doesn't appear to be, maybe I'm mistaken here, but in the combat section, like, interception has to do with an inactive player. Michael is not a player. He'd just be sitting there, right? Withdrawal. Well, you're allowed to withdraw, but somebody has to make that decision. There's no decision-making process for unaligned neutrals, which would mean he's kind of a sitting duck, right? It would also mean that the Austrians wouldn't have his troops. He probably would have been wiped out. The Austrians then could have taken Bucharest from the Turks, and they wouldn't return it, which also disturbs me. Since I've been playing it as though it's allied, I'm putting an alliance marker there. I suspect that's what's intended, but there's other stuff that's, not clear as well. So, for example, the fact that this was recaptured by the Austrians, maybe there's supposed to be a key, fortified city there for that. That also is not addressed. The implications of alliance. So, if you recall, at the beginning of the game, the Turks had markers in all of their vassals. Okay? makes sense. But what's not clear is whether or not, if you get an allied minor, do you get them as a key? Do you get one of your little markers on there? At which point, if that was the case, two of these would have already been in play, and the Austrians would have won the game. Now, obviously, somebody would have come in against it. But I'm left with these big things. I don't know if the game's over. I don't know if it was won already, because they have two allies, both of which have fortified cities, which, if that was the case, they've already been handed out. Now, the victory on that, I think, is at the end of a turn, but it may be immediate, which would have ended the game immediately. Automatic win. So, yeah, playing the Michael the Brave card would have won the Habsburgs their territory. Well, maybe not, because I think they hadn't yet taken Buda. But there's not much anybody could have done about all of it, right? So this game may have been over back on, what, turn one? By the play of this card, simply because they, once they captured one more city, well, they may have used Michael to go take Beograd. I don't remember what happened. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we will keep playing as we are without a knowledge of whether or not, allies give you the key there. There is nothing that I've found that describes an alliance, a general rule of alliances with minors and how they're handled. And there's also still that question, hey, was... Oh, Jesus, is this the whole deck? Yeah, I split the deck in half, I guess. All right. I'm just so fucking confused. But yeah, the game could have been over. It also... Maybe I'm cheating by moving into by being able to assimilate those troops, because maybe they're not supposed to be allied troops. But if they weren't allied troops, it would have been fairly easy for me to march in there and attack them. I would have had to discard a 3 card to do that. But I could have taken Bucharest from them, right? So I just don't know. Anyway, the reason I'm pawing through my deck is I had so many fund markers, I thought, well, I probably want to spend one, because my next leader may not have the right. He only has he has a funds maximum of 3, so he's able to hold his cash, but yeah. It's impossible to know if you're playing the game right. That is sort of the key takeaway I'm getting with this. The rules are bad enough that, with Europa Universalis, there's enough going on in the game that, like, you can put it aside and say, you know what? I don't give a shit who wins or loses. I just want to see the story unfold. This is not that kind of game. It's not giving that kind of scope of a narrative, and therefore I feel like you got to be able to tell whether or not you're moving towards your victory conditions. Much less, did I win the game automatically? I don't know. Anyway, I'll keep going, because what the hell, but this game is not ready for prime time. Going back to something else, the Austrians might well want to end the war with the Ottomans, and since the Ottomans can't initiate that, and they'd love it to end or something, I don't know, well, maybe I wouldn't, because, no, all my victory point spaces are not home territories, so I think they wouldn't go back. Like, they couldn't be reclaimed, which means that would suck for the Ottomans, but at least they wouldn't be at war as well as everything else. I don't know. I don't know where they want to sit here. They're not in good shape. But one thing that I was thinking was, well, I could grab I could spend to get the diplomacy card and or immediate end of war, improve my chances of doing that. You can't. You can only grab the red star cards. They basically use one-time events. I find that really kind of weird. Obviously, with the 30 Years' War, it seems important because you only have 2 turns you can play it in, and you have to engineer to get 2 different card plays. So, and you have to know all that before you start playing if you want to take advantage of these 3 victory points that you might want. But yeah, you can only grab and what seems to me to be the sort of, oh, these are the things in a lot of cases that players maybe don't have a lot of control over. It's hard to tell. You could definitely certainly you can make an argument for the 2 with the 30 Years' War. I got no problem with that. But some of the others, maybe you can't make so much of an argument that opportunity is something that would always be available if you had enough funds. So like French intrigues. That doesn't... Certainly the Ottomans and the French had correspondence and, a near alliance, if not an actual formal one, where they were operating together against the Habsburgs. However, would that always be available to the Ottomans by spending some money? Or actually, was it more that the French were spending money to bring the Ottomans in? Yeah, that's a good question there. War against Persia. I don't know how much power Poland would have by spending a little bit of money, or the Habsburgs, towards forcing the Ottomans into a war with Persia. That feels like something outside their control. Which, to some extent, that means it probably shouldn't even be a card, right? It should be on a random events table. You can hear my arguments about that kind of stuff with other CDGs, where, yeah, did the player really have the control to play this? But they have more than the usual control with this. Not only do they have a card that they can choose to play or not to, trigger this issue that legitimately there was very little diplomatic correspondence between Poland or between any European power and Persia, Iran, whatever. That was just too far away, outside the sphere. But not only do you have the ability to choose not to play that 3-point card and thereby, give up some opportunities that reflect some sort of cash already, but you have the opportunity to do it at any turn you like simply by expending an extra fund marker. Which starts to put it into a really, really questionable place as far as I'm concerned. Like, that fund marker, being able to select something, might be a nice gameplay mechanism, but it sure the hell doesn't comport with any kind of reality. Anyway, time to shuffle and deal out some cards, and I think I never want to look in the deck again. Because it's like any card is going to trigger this kind of, oh wow, that doesn't quite fit together, or geez, I'm not sure what I'm doing. Anything in the game can. Here it was noticing the dip markers, whatever. It's cute. The Ottomans are down to no cards except their 2 base cards. Have fun, dude. Enjoy the game. Lied. The Russians did dig through their deck, ended up paying a fund. I'm basically doing hey, I can dig through the deck for free. I'll reshuffle if I don't find anything. That's what the Austrians did. But the Russians did find something they want. This is incredibly useful. Increase your domestic policy by 1 level. Move your economic DP marker 2 markers to the right. That just, is going to help me so much in the future, that it's worth spending a big card as well as a fund, which is basically 2 big cards when it comes down to it. Okay, that gets me through, and yeah, I promise I'm not just following the sequence of play and watching. But, That gets me through to the rulers changing, and we're going to probably have quite a few happening because turn 3, I think we have a fair number of them going. I could have extended Charles IX by 1 turn, but obviously I went Gustavus. And likewise, Rudolph II Habsburg. Matthias is pretty damn good. If I extend, I have to flip him over. He's going to be weaker, so it's not a good call in these cases. There might be some cases where extending a ruler is worth it. I'm really beginning to lean towards that the Michael the Brave card basically is almost an auto win for the Habsburgs if they can fuck the Ottomans over. That I should have key markers here and whichever other one I'm allied with, because so armies returning to, I don't know, it's just sort of a feeling of the thing, but one army chosen by the player can stay on controlled space. I don't even think that I could be in this space if I didn't have a marker there, basically. Well, I could have entered it at war. It's so, something needs to be handled with these, and maybe it's somewhere. Maybe it's somewhere, and maybe it's time for me to stop. Used to indicate control. But they don't tell you what constitutes control there, right? And this concept of alliance with minors is really not handled. A normal alliance wouldn't change any control of spaces, right? Yeah. And the only things kind of like this in Here I Stand are really, you do get control of the area. So that may be the assumed situation here. Because I'm left, oh here, control of a city. Army of superpower or minor state. Yeah, it really looks to me like minors. Okay, now this is under 6, it's in that 6.9, which is the movement. This is going to be in the siege section. But it really looks to me like minors would provide you with keys, and therefore this game is actually over. And I'm trying to figure out if I can keep playing under the conditions of it having, it should have ended. Now, I could give like a 1-turn grace period where Poland and, other players might come in to try to fight the Habsburgs, but, it's just so skewed at this point that I really don't know. And obviously, there's many different ways to interpret how this situation is. One is that I'm not allied with them, that I fucked that up, and there's nothing in the rules that says I'm allied, except that there's sort of this assumption that somebody should control those pieces from that card. Is this handled anywhere special? Weird. John Zamoyska. Where the fuck is he? Has he already been played out? I don't know. I'm like so fucking lost trying to figure this shit out. God. So Zamoyska would be Transylvania. Transylvania is, I don't know. I look here to find out who's what. Transylvania is the Orange and Nagasbiskin, which is the one that did not convert. So, is that this color? It is not. I don't know where Zamoyska is. Hold on. Pennsylvania, Moldova, which is the purpley colored thing. Is that Yasi? Yeah. Okay. I don't see a John Zamoyska. The counters of that should be purpley, so they should be in one of these kind of sets. I don't know which one. I don't have him in my extras. Oh, is he over here? No. I don't know where he is. Well, I found him. He is a Polish leader whom I guess transfers over if Moldova breaks its vassal subjugation, which we decided it did not, he would transfer over with, I guess, the Polish army that he's in command of. I wish you told me that it was him, but the one way I was able to find was, well, here's one. This is in a different scenario. This is a two-turn, the Long Turkish War, maybe the first of the, and I mean, I could have seen it here too, had I looked. I just didn't imagine that a Polish leader would swing over to be Turkish and then be Polish again. I did search through all these counters. There is no equivalent Ottoman leader, I think. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's one for each. There does not appear to be. I would have noticed that there was a leader that didn't get assigned. But good Lord, I'm so fucking lost at this point. Okay, I don't remember what I was looking up, about this to find that, but I feel like no matter what, the HRE is kind of screwed. Something is screwy. Either they should win the game because the markers should have been there, or, gosh, I really should be getting the 30 Years' War. I should have set that up because of the turn situation there. But anyway, handed them out a pile of cards. Don't know what I'm doing with miners. I think they have to beat someone else to win. It would be horribly unbalanced if the Michael the Brave Guard basically put them, into victory. It could actually do that, right? Because I got this and this. I needed these two. You might make an argument I couldn't have gotten this, but I could have gotten all three of them. It could have been an automatic victory on turn, on just playing that card. That seems highly, highly unfair. First of all, undesirable. You don't want the game ending on the first turn, But if it is going to happen, you want it to happen for really good reasons, like somebody really played the hell out of a bunch of stuff. I got to swap batteries. I could see a situation where, yeah, a certain number of plays could get you into a place where you're close to winning. And honestly, the Poles are pretty fucking close too. Like, if they could march against the Russians, if they joined the Swedes against the Russians, they might well have made their way into a victory, right? Or against someone else. Like it really kind of feels like there are a lot of people who have an opportunity with a little bit of luck on their first hand or whatever to push a win on that first turn. That is undesirable. Because what it means is everybody has to know what that danger is and be prepared to stop it. A game like Here I Stand has enough issues in terms of like, yeah, it's possible for the Ottomans, I think, to win the game on the first couple, on turn 2 or 3 or somewhere around there, if they do everything right and nobody's paying attention. But here, there's really not a lot anybody can do, right? Like, you'd have to be like, you'd have to be aware that, hey, the Habsburgs could just win the game if they have a decent, if they have a decent set of cards in their hand at the beginning of the game. Or if the Poles launch a war against Russia, there's a potential danger there. And what that means is other people have to be prepared to throw themselves into a declaration of war. Now, if I recall correctly, how the fuck do you declare war in this game? You know you pay a cost. I'm really thinking that I may just be stopping here. Because it's just gotten to the point where I don't know if I've got a playable... I don't know if I have a playable situation in the sense that, like I said, the Habsburgs either were supposed to have won already, or they're in a position where it's going to be very, very difficult because they've gotten rid of one of their longer-term goals. They've basically lost it by not knowing a card. But I suspect they were supposed to win. Now, what the fuck was I looking up? I got no idea. Yeah, how the fuck do you declare war? According to sequence, players can declare war. To declare war, player controlling must put on used... so you play your ops points. Now, the only time I think you can declare war is during... I don't know. Right? So, what we have here is negotiation segment. It appears that this can happen during negotiations. Which I assume happens in order of these, which means people have already discussed anything about peace or whatever, and now players can throw themselves at war by spending cards. And in the case of, say, Poland and Russia, you'd be looking at a 3-point expenditure, which they clearly have. It didn't look valuable to me, but now it's beginning to look more and more valuable. Anyway. Where the hell am I? I have dealt out all my cards. I'm killing off rulers. Okay. I fucked up with my Russians because Boris Godunov, on his other side, is Vasily the Fourth. Just a great place to hide him, right? Now, and that means Boris has no... And I noticed this at one point before, but then, it's in the wrong place, right? So if Boris was not in play, the ruler card cannot be used. Player must use Vasily, the weakened side of Boris. Now, I don't know. Could I have extended Boris? I have no fucking clue. I'm just pitching this because it says if Boris was not in play, his ruler card cannot be used. Players must use Vassal the Fourth. Does that imply that Boris could have survived? Maybe I didn't cheat there. Maybe. Anyway. But I couldn't extend him without flipping him over to the weakened side, which is not him. Now, oh, this is turn 3. Yeah, so Boris is around on turn 2 as a leader counter, which again leads you to believe that he should exist on turn 2. Again, yeah, whatever. Great. Cool. I had put Vasily the Fourth as the other leader. They probably shouldn't both be on the board at the same time. Didn't really matter. I never used this army over here, but yeah. All right, we got a Romanov coming in. And let's see. We look at all our leaders. We have one leader. That's it. One leader. Which seems too little, you know, especially facing if the Poles are going to attack us. And this may be the last turn of the game, because I think the Poles can probably wipe the Russians out. And probably wish to, and I probably don't want anybody to try to stop them. Again, the Habsburgs probably should have already won back on turn 1 or 2, and now. So following the reasoning from the previous bit of the turn, the Poles are going to declare war on the Russians. They spend a 3-point card to do so. Putting this in place, and they're hoping to be able to take 2 fortified cities. Now, it could well be that the Habsburgs already won this game. We're not going to worry too much about winning and losing. We're going to see how easily the Poles can maybe take 2 of these fortified cities. They have a couple of them on their border, but their armies aren't necessarily poised to deal with them. So that's what we're going to do there. I don't see anything else that's happening in the negotiation phase, which will put us to the religious unrest phase. I'll come back after the results of that. We do have some potentials there. The Poles have a lot of areas that, you know, so there's a lot of room for that. Going to that. Note something interesting here. So, if the Habsburgs could grab these locations similar to the state that the Ottomans had them as vassals by being allies, they would be subjected to the religious rules. And that's problematic. I mean, if you look, like Bucharest is, let's find it, is going to be Eastern Orthodox. So those alliances could cause revolts against the the power, you know, the minor power, essentially, if Habsburg control markers were in those places, because those control markers would not be religiously aligned. So that's kind of an argument against these markers being placed, but it's just, yeah, it's not clear what the situation is. You know, who controls this is the big question. And I've kind of gone for a muddling, you know, the way that I've played it is sort of this muddling way that can't be held up by the rules. The rules are either, this is not Habsburg territory and therefore their army can't be there, or it is Habsburg territory because the alliance converted it over, and then it would be religiously not aligned with them. Which is possible. You could see a leader, you know, making an alliance with the devil, as it were, causing problems. Weird interpretation. I'm going to have the Habsburgs declare war on whatever this is. Also spending a 3-point card. Now, whatever that is an interesting question. I don't know the names of the different. That's Transylvania, which is not a vassal, so it shouldn't invoke anything special with the Turks, although we're already at war with the Turks. But that's going to bring a whole bunch of troops into play here. This is not turn 2, so he's not on the board. So we got this force. And I don't think they're controlled by anybody, which is somewhat disturbing. I gotta look up like the Brandenburg rules and shit like that to see if there's anything weird going on here. But yeah. Before I do that, the reason the Austrians are declaring war on this is I gotta get 2 more keys. And I will probably declare war on one of my allies too, but I probably, 10 years is probably what it takes to succeed in a siege in this game. So we'll leave it at that. Ooh, there was one more Turkish area. I only gave them a 3, but I think they rolled pretty low. A couple little pieces of information that don't help answer the questions. I had some thought that maybe I'd find something. First of all, under the Transylvania, Wallachia, Moldova, if the vassalage was in play, if others, I assume if, I don't know, if other superpower moves combat unit onto any vassal space, then the Ottoman Empire can declare war without paying cost and operational points, as an exception to 6.5.5, which I hope is the negotiation rules. No, it's within the negotiation, which I've looked at. Current relationship does not matter between the two countries, the two superpowers, I guess. All vassals' combat units are under control of the Ottoman Empire. Nothing about the territory changing hands or anything like that. Of course, under vassalage, at least in the initial setup, not under these rules. These rules say if minor state is in vassal subjugation, player controlling Ottoman Empire can play the calling the vassal and adds the combat units to his army, and control them as his own. Yeah, there's nothing that indicates that the Ottomans would get their territory back under the same circumstances as before, but whatever. But anyway, they get to control the troops as if they called the vassal in that particular case. That's fine. But again, nothing about control of the territory. There's nothing that allows the Ottomans to restore the control that they once had. Now, they can establish vassal subjugation in 2 ways: playing a diplomacy card, conquering all national spaces of the national state. They can choose vassal subjugation or conquest. Now, there's no real rule on conquest. I guess you would just get your little markers there, but under the initial setup for vassal subjugation, you get the important marker there, which is the fortified city. Okay, but elsewhere, there's Brandenburg, which also isn't a special case. Where all units recruited can be added to one army, moreover one commander, yeah. So this is if somebody goes into the Holy Roman Empire, and the Habsburgs get to grab the mercenaries in that case. Also, Brandenburg is in alliance with the Holy Roman Empire. Player controlling the Holy Roman Empire can use combat units of this minor state as their own. Nothing about converting Berlin, which, you know, it makes sense to me, right? The Habsburgs getting Brandenburg as an ally wouldn't make it theirs any more than them getting these as allies make it their territory, which is just sort of the, you know, trying to use common sense is what got me into this. But if Berlin is controlled by other superpower, but the Holy Roman Empire recaptures this fortified city, Brandenburg returns to the gameplay in the next game turn possessing all combat units. Nothing about what happens to the control, though, again. If player controlling the Holy Roman Empire is at war against Brandenburg and captures other cities and or fortified city Stettin, he or she cannot move domination of the marker of the Reich marker on his sheet. The counter must remain in the start box for the rest of gameplay. Which, you know, captures other cities. I mean, I just can't make sense out of this thing. You know, it's like, what if I capture Berlin? And I'm at war against Brandenburg. What then? Well, can I take Berlin? But not other cities in the Reich without screwing my victory point situation? It just, none of it makes any damn sense to me. And it's very problematic. Anyway, right now I'm working out whether or not the mercenaries, whether or not people buy mercenaries. The Poles are going to buy, but I don't know. The Austrians kind of don't really need it. They have a huge army to bring into play. Both Russia and Poland bought one mercenary. Russia may have had points to buy another. I felt a little weird about doing it anyway because I've got, that brings me up to 12, which means I suffer attrition, which is problematic. For the Poles, I didn't have another 1-point card. I don't want to spend a big card. I'm going to need a lot of movement, etc. And yes, I have a big hand, but it's not that big. That's going to put me to strategic deployment of an army. I don't remember doing that. Unlimited of superpower controlled spaces, but not controlled by ally. Now, yeah, but there's superpower allies as well as minor allies, which is where things get kind of weird. That's the issue that we're looking at over here, right? All terrain types can be traversed. For naval, which the Swedes are going to be facing, you have to be able to ship them across. There's no interception for naval deployment, though, as opposed to during the combat realm. And this is all kind of weird because, you know, it's 10-year turns. So, sure, there's plenty of time to move stuff when you wouldn't get intercepted, but that may be the case during the movement impulses, too. So it's kind of hard to justify why one is subject to interception but the other is not. It all just seems, you know, kind of arbitrary, really. This is where I've dropped my armies and oh shit, my batteries. Not operating function, the charger. Poles have a smaller army facing the Russian army. I couldn't consolidate everything. I can move one force up there. Swedes are down here. Now the Swedes are in an interesting position, and the Swedish-Russian position is kind of interesting, where the Swedes may capture Russian territory to get it out, to keep it out of Polish hands, so the Poles can't just win the game, right? Because Sweden and Poland can't go to war under, you know, there would have had to be a declaration of war during the negotiations phase. So over 10 years, unless somebody gets a card that'll help them tremendously, Sweden and Poland cannot go to war over the course of that 10 years. It had to be made, you know, before any troops move around, before any indications come. Now, this is, you know, a situation, I don't like how this works. It creates this concept of like, no war is less than 10 years and stuff like that, which just feels completely wrong to me. Now, whatever. But there's enough going on that's wrong enough. You know, consider here I stand where you don't have declarations of war, if I recall correctly. I know Virgin Queen does, so I'm a little confused on that, but I seem to remember people just launching attacks across places all over the place. It's been a while. This kind of chart feels more like Napoleonic Wars had something like that, which restricted your going to war. I have no problem with you restricting going to war. I kind of like the idea of diplomacy preventing you, but you should be able to declare war more or less in the midst of a turn. You know, as conditions necessitate. In this case, well, look, Poland could be trying to, let's say Poland gets a blitz, somehow prevents the Swedes from moving and captures, both of these early on. Now the Swedes can't stop the Poles from winning the game. We're looking more likely at the opposite situation, which is the Poles won't be able to win because the Swedes will be blocking off their territory, which is a little more palatable in a way. But yeah, if somebody's due to win the game anytime soon, you probably should be able to do something about it. Now, the small Polish army may or may not be a horrible thing. In terms of strength, we're looking at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Probably should have put the mercenary in with that instead of the other unit. You know what? I'm going to do that just to be shitty. So that's 11 to 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, approximately the same size, but with better leadership. And we can expect to win that fight. The bigger problem is going to be up here, where the Swedes are going to cut the Poles off and prevent them, from transiting areas. If I take this space, clear it out, and then move here and take that, then the furthest the Poles can get is kind of to there. However, 2 fortified cities is enough. There's nothing that prevents me, I think, from moving down to here and just sieging that. Which seems weird. It seems like you should have to gain control of a path back home or something. But I haven't seen anything along those lines. That's going to put me on the player's impulses, and, I came down here hoping to rip through a turn. Yeah. It's hard to rip through a turn when there's this many cards in one, but to rip through a turn, and instead I'm just facing a completely different situation than I expected to come of the game, which is that, oh look, the game was probably already over and in the Austrians' favor, although the rules aren't clear enough to tell that, and it almost certainly is right on the edge of being over in the Poles' hands, simply because they got a big, powerful army and only needed to take 2 keys. They could have done it earlier in the game. Now, I do have the hard call of whether or not to deal with these revolts, because if I'm going for victory, I kind of can't afford to fuck around trying to clean those revolts out. Wow, I have an army here that there's no real reason for it to be there, but there's not much I can do about that, except pay to move it. Okay, so that's probably it for tonight, but maybe not. I mean, it's not really night, it's mid-morning. Well, mid-dark part of morning. Another place where the rules don't make sense. I'm down here because my video game, I've got a big event coming, but yeah, I'm still fucking playing it. But I gotta hold off for like 5 hours to maximize the resources going into the event, which kind of sucks it. But like, I'm used to playing through, from when the day shifts onward. Well, here the event happens midday, as it were. The day shifting in this case happens at like 5 p.m. or something for me. Okay, so the Swedes are going to play this Army Rebellion card, I think. That was my decision. Hey, if we freeze out, one of the Polish armies, they're not going to be able to win easily, I assume. Okay, great. Plus, it's a plus card, so I can get a free bonus off of it. Great. And I only want a free bonus because now we're all kind of aware, hey, Poland declared war, they're close, uh-oh. And there was this whole rules discussion of whether Austria had already won the game. I'm assuming that would have happened at the table. The players would have discussed this and been like, well, you can't win it now. There had to be some opportunity we could understand that you could win. Chances are playing a game like this opposed, if you came to a situation like what we're running into, it would be time to pack it in and just say fuck it. And I probably should have done that. But since I didn't notice till this video, I think I'll get at least another turn in. Okay, so that sounds pretty cool. All right, so I go look at the Army Rebellion rules and how it happens. Not what happens with it, but rebellious army cannot move or intercept, which seems, there are a few effects that are listed here, so I think it covers that. But the rebellion can be suppressed in two ways. Commander's authority, and this is what I saw and said, I don't know. Paying 1 operational point, the commander, what commander, is moved onto the space occupied by rebellious army. Well, there is a commander on each of these armies. It's not necessary, but there is. Okay? Paying 1 additional operational point, player rolls a die. If the result is lower or equal to the commander rating, the rebellion is over. So the question then is the commander part of the rebellion if he starts with it? And does that mean I have to move another army up there to try to fix things? And what if the commander is the king? Or is this just hey, if you don't have a commander, you can spend an operational point to move a commander? Now, I don't recall, this is equally annoying, I don't recall commanders being able to move freely. Like, I don't see any other rule that says you can just walk commanders around. So who knows what's up with that, and whether or not there's some way you can like spend a point to just move a commander to an army or something along that line. I would assume it would be under the movement rules. Something vaguely is stuck in my memory, like an echo of that, but it could just be this rule I just looked at. And like in commander replacement or whatever, there's no capability to move commanders around there either. So my assumption was 1 movement point per. Maybe this is a special case. If there's a rebellion, you can spend a point to move a commander to an army on his own. I don't know. It's all a bunch of, as usual with this game, stuff that just doesn't fucking make sense. And I'll put that over here. I'll bop this up, taking one of them, discard this, and say, this game is just so far from being a product which should have been released. They did a really good job on the graphics for it. I'll give them that. It looks really, really professional. The cards, everything, the artwork selected. That should be the last fucking thing you do with a new game. Yeah, sure. Sometimes rules get, sometimes there's problems with the rules or whatever. But man, I don't think I've ever seen something this polished. There's a couple of cases that, come kind of close where there were a lot of problems, but yeah. I just really don't know. Like, this is worse than EU, as far as I'm concerned. Worse than games where they completely republished, completely redid the rulebook, like One by the Sword and Lincoln's War. Now, Won by the Sword was GMT, so they provided you with a new printed rule book. That is the gold standard, but I don't see many people doing that. Lincoln's War, they redid the entire rule book and put it out. And Lincoln's War is a lot more fucked up. Like, they had to change the game significantly. Won by the Sword, the rule book was just difficult to cope with. Lincoln's War, the game had serious problems, but nothing on this line. It wasn't like, every single play you're stuck, or nearly every play, you're stuck trying to figure out, well, what actually happens, what applies, and left with this big pile of question marks. There were a few things that had to be resolved to make the game work that were, not right. The bigger problem was that the game didn't work as intended. And so they basically had to redevelop the rulebook. That they just gave you an electronic version, therefore I've never played it again. Someone actually brought up, hey, wouldn't it be nice if there was an electronic version of the rules so you could search it? That's helpful, especially in really, really big rule books. But I much prefer hard copy. There's a recent, the guy who did EU and Le Grand Guerre, I picked up one of his more recent games, and it also was just as problematic, as those are. But again, I don't feel as stymied by any of those as I do by this. And it may be that so much of the game is hidden in the cards. The fact that in the midst of like normal play, just looking through my hand of cards or whatever, I almost inevitably come up with some kind of question that cannot be answered by looking at the card and the rolls. Who's going to try to fuck with the Polish army? Again, everybody just knows they're about to win now. But I get to play with one of these first. I'll play with this one and get rid of that. I don't know where it goes. I guess there. Assassination attempt. I'm going to try to kill whoever this is. Oh, this is the John Zanowski, who nothing special should have happened. So if I roll a 5 or a 6, that commander is eliminated. If it were a king, he's just, so badly wounded that he can't lead armies anymore. Nope, so no effect there. Got reaction cards and didn't check the polls. They have a spy card. I could cancel out either of these two events that were used against them. I'm on the Habsburgs. The Ottomans, just for what it is, played the Sultan grows in power to increase whatever it was, the domestic policy marker. They're up to 2 cards. So they'll be getting, 2 or 3 cards a turn. I think I screwed up, though, with them. I was at no cards. I should have had 2 regular cards that I did not grab. Okay. Russia considered the diplomacy. They had the diplomacy card. They didn't have the follow-up card that would have ended the war with Poland. But, the spy is a 3-point card. Spending that to prevent an event that I think I can resolve with 1 point is probably a mistake. Now, the assassination would have been bad, but it failed, and also I kind of am cutting it close with the polls as it stands. So I think we're going to leave things as it is. The Austrians are also worried about a possible situation. And so I, too, will do the same damn thing. I'm going to hit Army C, though. Which is going to... Basically, what I'm thinking is, we got enough going on to screw with the polls here. Nah, I'll hit Army B. You know what? I'll hold on to this. I'll hold it for later. So I have to figure out what the hell I'm doing. situation for the Poles. They're beginning to feel it's slipping away as people are playing cards against them, etc., in terms of being able to make that early victory. Had I done this earlier in the game, had I not revealed to everybody, essentially what the victory conditions are through that long discussion and whatever, it wouldn't have driven attention so much, but I didn't really realize how close Poland was. Pursuing this is going to hurt Poland's chances in the future, and that sucks. So for example, this one I'm going to play for its event. I lose a fund marker and I lose a domestic policy, which is fine because I have no domestic policy. Is that fine? Good question. There's some place here, crisis and collapse. If economy is moved leftmost box of the economy track, domestic policy may end up weakened. If domestic policy is 2 or less and player is forced to lower it further, it remains unchanged, but economy moves to the left as many boxes. So I will lose an economy marker instead. This is bad, but I feel like I have to take my shot here. And why is this a shot? Because I spend 1 point to try to convert that. Now, we go back to the rebellion, and I'm making a snap ruling that I don't have to move the leader there. The leader's not going to be part of the revolt. That would be ridiculous if it's the king, so I don't think that's possible, but okay. Sorry, this is heresy. It looks similar. Army rebellion. So the other way of doing it is to move an army into play. So if I roll lower than or equal to my command rating, a 4 or less, I resolve this issue. Now, did I really want to play the 3 for this? Well, that's the only way I'm going to get into this siege right away and sort of force the issue and maybe be able to get 2 spaces on Russia up there. I only need to get 2 spaces total. I do not get a 4 or less. That means I have 2 points remaining. Well, I'll try again, I guess. And again. All right, well, that rebellion was incredibly successful. It's looking like Poland probably can't win the game on this turn, and I may want to start working on recovering my position more than trying to take 2 areas. Of course, I've hurt my position so much already. I'm at war with Russia now. Everybody's playing cards against me. Meanwhile, the Austrians are going to be 1 space away. They can declare war on one of their 2 allies and take that out. And yeah. Yeah. The thing is, though, once you're clearly pursuing an automatic victory, there's a fair amount of pain people can lay on you. If it's a stealth automatic victory, like I think Austria may have fallen into, it would have been much, much harder. But people could still play bad cards on you and try to break it up, rebellions, stuff like that. Maybe it would work, maybe it wouldn't. I still think the Austrians probably under the way... Again, I don't know, because would an alliance with Brandenburg mean I get control of Berlin? You know? If not, then it shouldn't mean that I get control of these 2. But why do the other alliance-like mechanisms? Now, obviously, the vassalage situation is stronger in concept than an alliance, although you don't actually have an alliance. Like, you don't get to use their troops or anything. So yeah, I just don't know, you know? But we're playing it the way we are, where Austria had to go to war with one of those countries to get the control marker on it. Although those countries can lay control markers for Austria, as per the way the rules are written. So yeah, we'll be going up. I'll do at least one more card at this point. The fact that I have 5 hours doesn't mean I'm going to spend anywhere near that kind of time playing the game. I'm just not capable of doing that. I watch fucking videos, I take a shit, I sleep, whatever I can do. So that the victory conditions have caused a weird situation where Sweden is actually likely to gain territory on Russia that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to gain. The Russians were more or less holding them at bay. The fact that Poland went for the win means that Russia pays the price for it. There's a problem with that. That's a kind of mechanism you see in a number of multiplayer games where someone can grab something. The coin games are a good example of this, where someone can stop someone else who's not technically at war with them by like seizing territory. Makes more sense in the coin games to me. That kind of, if you think of like Vietnam, U.S. sort of seizing something that could have been South Vietnamese might be of some importance. But honestly, the way the game's designed, they are so intrinsically allied that doesn't actually, it's baked into the game in a way that it doesn't actually hurt them. Here, it's Russia had to leave things open, Sweden's grabbing them, Poland can't take them because they're not at war with Sweden, and for these 10 years, they're not allowed to change who they're at war with. Not that they would be able to face Sweden and Gustavus very well at this point. Hey, they historically went to war. Have a way to join a war with Poland if we so desire. Play when the Tsar's throne. On the Tsar's throne is Boris, no. Or Vasily, no. This card has been negated, but it would have created a war between Sweden and Russia, and a war between Sweden and Poland. Interesting play there. This isn't going to happen. Now, this is again a card that back on turn 2, because the turn 1 you need to pick a certain card. This is you must pick this on turn 2, which is why somewhere it says you should pursue the Dmitriads, and the Poles, have a question of whether or not they should. Not clear to me, but again, you have to know the deck to be able to play the game and get a reasonable chance of the historical outcomes. And I find that disturbing. It's one thing to kind of vaguely know what might happen by your knowledge of history. It's another to know that you need a specific card and you need to take this task and do this thing X, and it's not all plotted out for you, okay? If there was a player aid for each nation explaining what they need to do and why, or what they need to consider and why, that would be very helpful. Secondary thing for that would be almost as valuable, but requires more effort from the player, would be a compendium of all the interesting events and a breakdown, of the point values and all that kind of information, just so that you don't have to have played the game many times. Because quite honestly, unlike Here I Stand in Sword of Rome, I don't think this is going to get a lot of plays by anyone. It's just not that tournament-style game. It's not that tight. I have an interesting nasty here. That's hard to say. Place these units on an empty space adjacent to Krakow or Warsaw and controlled by the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. On the stack, put a rebellion marker, the rebellious army, this new force. I don't know what you do if the units aren't available, because they aren't. The rebellious army must be defeated in land battle, i.e. I guess you can't use the commander procedure to bring there. If they stay on the board until the end of the current turn, domestic policy of Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth is reduced by 1 level, and the ruler's card is flipped to its weakened side. That's a potent and nice little thing. I think it's more important for me to move and take Russia, take a Russian territory. Unfortunately, I want to play a 2-point card, which is why I was looking at this one for this facet. I could play a 3, 1 convert to, sorry, 1 to convert as 2, and then 3 to move into that space, be prepared for a siege for the next turn. So it's not a terrible thing if I play a 3, but I was kind of hoping to play a 2. But this is nice in a battle, which I may well have, although it's looking less and less likely. And this one I can play as soon as the Poles try to move something to kill their movement for a turn. May be able to get both of these spaces if I'm really lucky from that. This card, again, just doesn't look like something I'm going to get in the near future, so I guess I'll pay the 3-point card. And yeah, I know I'm looking way too much detail, especially since it now seems like the game may take longer. Now this area, Narva, is probably pro-Swedish. It's probably Protestant, yeah. So we retake it 1, 2, 3 to there. I don't think Russia wants to play against me for this, but it's hard to tell, you know? It's like, if the Swedes are, if the Poles are able to take both of these spaces, it's game over. But I may not really want the Swedes to take any of my spaces. I don't know that I'm able to stop them, though. So the hell with that. Let me see if I have a... I probably want to convert some units. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. So we'll convert that. It still stays at 11, so that drops. But that gets me another unit that I can build. That's pretty much the only effect. It actually reduces my combat strength, but increases my stolidity or whatever. Russians want to force the Poles to come to them. Well, that's Dmitry. But it may not be the Dmitry. It has a star on it. What the hell does that mean? Does it, or is that just a mark? Well, now I don't know. That's Michael. Let's see. That's Vasily. I wonder if the Dmitrievs have this, explain this. Maybe that leader shouldn't be on the board. Maybe he should. Doesn't say anything. Most leaders do not have that little marking there. It looks like there's an asterisk there. It is not clear to me why that's there. Anyway, and there's probably a reason, right? You know? I mean, is it on both sides? It's not on both sides, so I think it's just a stain or something. We'll call it that. Hard to tell, hard to tell. Okay, so the Russians want to play this because I don't want to take actions. It's a nice big 3-point card, which is painful, but I really want to do this. Domestic policy by 1 level, economy DP 2 boxes to the right. So economy DP 1, 2, and this moves. And domestic policy went up by 1. It's a good card. You know, I don't want to use it for something else, and I'm kind of delaying time at this point. Why did I get down to 0 here? Oh, wait. Maybe I should be. Hold on. So, last turn was turn 2. I think he was without modifications. This would not have been a 2 cards more. It would have been a 1 card more. So I'll discard 1 card. because I upped it with this. And yeah, so I think I have one extra card. Select a superpower bounded with you by alliance. Bonded, I think they mean. You can exchange up to 2 foreign. Well, I don't have an ally. So, well, since my card limit is up to the maximum, I'm actually not allowed to invest anymore in that. I'm still at war with Austria. So I will play this for 2 points. I will move my big leader here to lay siege and try to take that away. If I succeed in taking that away, I think Austria can then take it back from me, and it'll be one of the, if they win here, they can take this back from me, and they win the game. I hope so, because I want this to be over. I really fucking do. So that was 1 point of movement. I get to play something here. I'm going to increase my military for the plus. And what do I do with the extra point? Wait a minute. I don't ever know. So those 2 convert to this. This is still here. Let me get 1 more in play there. I got 1 ops point. I can put this in. I am oversized, so I will kill one of these off as I move into there. And that gets this there. Then we go to the Habsburgs. We're kind of, they kind of want to see this destroyed. Another thing is, I'm not sure that does anything to get rid of these troops. So if I conquer it, I assume after I conquer it, I would have to disband the units if I keep it for myself as opposed to giving it, to that nation. I also don't know what happens to this. Is it just, kind of like this up here where nobody controls it? I guess. There's no effect of conquest in this game, okay? And I think that's kind of the issue. But that's okay, because there would be an effect at the end of the 10 years. That army would dissolve because it would have nowhere to go home to. But if the Habsburgs end up betraying them and holding their capital instead of liberating it, and there is some place where liberation is mentioned for one particular country, probably Brandenburg. No, actually it is for the 3 vassal states. If the Ottomans recapture it, they have the option to either conquer it or turn it into vassal state. There is, as far as I know, nothing one way or the other as to what happens if the Habsburg, if somebody captures something of their ally. And, you could have the argument, hey, their army's still on your side. You can't just say they're conquered. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know. Nothing in this game makes, is solidly stated enough that I would trust, the absence of a statement as leaning in one direction or another. Nothing. So where the fuck am I? I'm on the Austrians. They want to siege this, and maybe they don't. They probably don't have a. Oh, they moved in here. They've got to do a battle. Oh, fuck me. All right. So let's jump back to last turn, and we got a battle here. This guy's there too, but he doesn't really count for much. He can take losses. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So let's get those there to begin with. Did I have any combat cards I wanted to play? Could have thrown them into Rebellion. Got this bribe in the city, which I have $2. I spent one, I don't remember on what, but on my toward absolute roll. Which, did I play it correctly? Yeah. Okay. I think so. There's other parts to it that I think if you don't have a fund marker, yeah, that's what I thought it was. Bribing the city, which I can buy a city off that I'm sieging. But I have this, which is, I guess, what I'm going to play. During land battle, after dice rolling, select one die and add one to the result. But I have to play it now, not after the battle, as it seems to indicate. Now, anybody else could play in on this. Nobody else is going to. Although Austria is potentially going to win the game. Probably more likely than the Poles are. Okay, so we have a 3 leader. They do not have a leader, so they get no bonus. So let's take a look at, let me get another die so that I can mark these properly. Okay, so I got a 4 and a 1 with the Austrians. That 4 can be up to a 5. The 1 turns to a 3, so they're at 8. So they will do 2 hits on their enemy. These got a 5, which does nothing. So these guys have to take 2 hits, and then they have to retreat, which means I will be able to do the siege on this turn. No one controls these. They will not, there's no way to bring them in as an ally or anything. So yeah, you can't help them, except you could conquer their territory from someone else who has it, but that still doesn't help them. So miners, with the exception of Brandenburg, and maybe, maybe Denmark has special rules or whatever, but yeah, there does not seem to be anything that allows you to handle these guys in any way. Now, there is no cost, so this was the battle. Let's look at retreat. I think nothing happens. If the inactive player loses, his army must move to a space controlled by superpower or onto terrain point. Well, it's not superpower. No superpower exists that control this enemy. That's the whole problem. One infantry combat unit can stay as garrison. Okay. So they are able to retreat, and I will fall them back towards the Ottomans for additional protection of that route or whatever. Because again, they are useless. Now, given that there's no superpower, they could only retreat into their own national territory as far as I'm concerned. We can take a look again and see if a rule has shown up that wasn't there earlier about these guys. It talks about vassal subjugation. There's no rule on miners, okay? There is no rule on miners in general. Each miner has its own specific rules. Of course, they say if miners stayed here, but that's vassal. The Ottoman Empire could have declared war. I was already at war. The vassals' combat units are under control of the Ottoman. Okay. I don't know what that does. Right? So that is, if other superpower moves in, it's like Berlin or Brandenburg. It does something. I'm going to mark these as allied with the Turks in that case. They weren't until somebody moved in there. But, yeah. Now they are allied. But now the Austrians get to launch their siege, and I got to figure out which card to spend for that. I'm thrilled about this, but my only 1-point card is this, and I have no use for a point at this point. I cannot spend it to build more troops. I have nothing that's cheap enough, and there are no other actions I could do with a point. I guess I could plunder. Let's see about plunder. I didn't think about that. Plunder's horrible. Plunder makes the territory bad, so you don't want it anymore. Yeah. Okay. So I will play this card, even though it might come in. It might be a handy card for me to launch my siege, because I'm only allowed one siege. I looked to see if I had assault capability. I have enough units, but they're not all full strength. So yeah. So threes. I'm hurt twice. Not good. And I'll kill off Cav, I guess. For what that matters. That puts me to the polls. Now the polls just saw a mutiny card go by, right? Yeah, the suppression of mutiny. Maybe if they have a mutiny, they'd play it on them. They're not ready for that yet. They still got to decide though. I don't think I can go for it. Polls are focusing on. They played a card to start clearing up some of the problems they have internally. Except that's the army that they need to roll against. Fuck. God, I don't fucking know. All right. So I get one more 4. Put the marker there. We're not going to be able to reach there. I maybe would have chosen a different card, but I don't know. Nope. One more 4. Yay, we get rid of the unrest or the army revolt at this point. Kind of gung-ho to keep going, but my battery situation is not good, so you know, we'll take a break, but going way too much detail on the play and the struggles still. I intended to be able to just come in and announce what was happening, but then the curveball of, hey, is the game over? Hey, the game could be over soon, came into play without me realizing, you know, that from the turn 1, these guys should have been going for the victory, and the game should have probably been over on turn 1 or 2. I would guess that half the games played correctly are either going to be deep challenge for victory at that point, or yeah, either a really good chance of the game ending at that point, or everybody is like expending their efforts not on trying to pad their own situation at all, but instead, you know, throwing cards to try to fuck with other people so that they can't win. In particular, the Poles and the Austrians, who are in the closest position to do so. I think it's fairly easy for the Austrians to set things up so that they can get rid of the Ottoman army and beat it. But maybe I got lucky. You know, I took the Michael card, I think. Also, whoa, maybe you're not allowed to do that. See, turn 2 you'd be allowed to. Yeah, no, you're only allowed the Michael card. So on turn 2 I would have been allowed to buy that other card, the War with Persia. But I got lucky in getting it, because the Ottomans would not be, you know, would not have just collapsed if they still had their army. The whole point there was they didn't have an army to withstand me. But the Poles, man, it looks to me like they probably are in a pretty good chance of winning. But as we can see, other people can stop that if they're familiar with the game and know to do so. However, you know, if you have a turn 1 declaration of war by Poland on Russia, Sweden's already at war with Russia. Everybody's new to the game. Poland is focusing on their own problems and their own thoughts, and is like, hey, I could win this game relatively easily. I only need 2 cities. There are 2 cities here. I've got, you know, better troops than anyone else at the beginning of the game. I've got a really good chance of taking this. Yeah, you know, especially if I burn some of my future concerns. Now, If everybody knows the game, you can stop them. And Here I Stand has analogous situations, which not quite as early in the game, but it has a situation where, like, the Ottomans, if nobody else knows the game, and the Ottomans kind of do, or really know their position well, and nobody else knows everything well, they've just been looking at their own stuff, trying to figure out how they can improve themselves, they can slip in with a victory. But it's like turn 3. It's not. This, I think, is turn 1. Anyway, is that an unbalanced situation? Well, only if the game doesn't. So it's an unbalanced situation for new people coming to the game and trying to play it. It's going to be very, very easy for the Poles to walk away with a victory. You could set it up again and play it again, because it didn't take very long to get through that victory. Of course, it took me forever because the rules are not strong enough to support this game. But if you had everything kind of, well, you're not going to know the rules. You're not going to have come to all the compromises and decisions on the rules without being very familiar with the game, I would suspect. So, hey, maybe it's a hidden prize with the rules being so bad is that, by the time you get this game to the point where you can actually play it, you will know the rules well enough that you can point out things like, Poland can probably win on the first turn, so if they declare war on Russia, everybody has to stop them, or something along those lines. Or Austria has a possibility of winning if they have the right cards on the first turn. They might just overwhelm the Ottomans. I don't think that anyone else is anywhere near. It's the fact that these markers, so many of them were already on the board to begin with. The Poles, it's just fixed that way. The Austrians have placed 2. So, I mean, how many markers do the Ottomans have? They have 3. These are little ones. 4. They're not that far behind. Russia is not going to be able to succeed at a big military victory against anyone unless they've got a lot of help. So I think Russia's in no position to win the game early. Sweden has way too few markers at the beginning of the game. They have to make up way too much ground to be able to win it right away. So Russia and Sweden have to build for a longer game. Poland, I think, has a chance at winning right away, and in doing so, they might just put themselves into the kind of historical decline, and I think we're going to see that now, which is that, if they push for that victory that looks like it's just in reach, and everybody stops them, it may have cost them so much that they'll never really get their footing back. Austria and the Ottomans, one or the other of them might be able to pull off a really early victory as well, depending on how the cards play out. If the cards aren't, really good for either one, it probably doesn't end up being that big a swing. The other thing is, if the Ottomans are winning, these territories were theirs to begin with, so they're actually going into, like, Vienna. That's pretty big. That's pretty big. That's another thing you're not going to see. So, like, the threat to Vienna, or threats to Vienna that happened, there were significant fights within a 10-year period or whatever. The Poles, when they showed up as, to relieve the siege of Vienna, that was not a decision that was made, at a 10-year boundary or whatever, I think. I don't know for sure. But it certainly wouldn't have been, because the siege was already set up. So it was basically made after battles and a movement into Vienna, and they were coming to protect and already hosed Austria. An Austria that was hosed probably during the impulse play. I don't know if there's something that allows the Poles to just intervene like that, or something that allows the Austrians to force the Poles to intervene like that. But yeah, it just isn't. I mean, there's just something so unrealistic about these 10-year turns, and you can't declare war outside of that, outside of the 10-year boundaries. That just does not work. It's too long a time span, and we had this issue with another game that I was playing. I don't remember. It may have been Assyrian Wars. I think it was. I want to say something else. Anyway, it's not down here. There was one of those Bronze Age type games. It wasn't Assyrian Wars. It was one that really didn't impress me. God Kings. Yeah. I don't remember who did that. I'm pretty sure it was God Kings, where there's like, a long multi-year turns again that had what felt more like a seasonal redeployment type situation. It's one thing to say, hey, winter's here, you got to go into winter quarters. As long as a turn is one year, that kind of works, or less. But when you start going into turns that are longer than a year, the idea of a continuous campaign having breakpoints where people have to withdraw their forces, having limited diplomacy and stuff like that, that doesn't work anymore. There's no cover for that. There's no cover for, well, it's the end of the decade, guess we'll all go home now. But at least maybe we'll be at peace or at war with someone else or something. But then, after that decade, after the next decade starts, well, we're at war with Sweden for this decade. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. There's something that makes some sense when you're looking at seasonal changes and you're saying, well, there's a campaign season. And yeah, sure, there are things that happen outside the normal flow. Like peace happens, maybe in the middle of summer, or a war breaks out at a specific time. But those kind of things, using events for them makes sense. Decades aren't reasonable breakdowns. They don't correspond to anything that generally applies in the way the seasons do. Anyway, used up all my battery, so. You know me at all, one of the things I kind of dislike about CDGs and the coin games and a lot of the more modern designs is that they really make you make these hard choices. I know that's part of the big positive for a lot of people. So I'm looking at these and I'm like, well, don't want to play 3-point cards, right? 3-point cards are powerful. Well, maybe not so much for Sweden. I can upgrade my fund markers with one, but otherwise it's a little iffy. Demetriids, out of play, so I can play that when I like. But what I want to do is I want to take this siege. Now, nothing prevents you from moving after a siege that I was able to find. So maybe I want to do that, is fire off a siege and do a movement. Can I succeed in my siege? Yeah. I'm very likely to succeed in it. So a 2-point card seems of some value to me. Okay, so we won't be playing the 1-pointer. Couple of 2-pointers are appealing. This one's a battle card, which allows me to re-roll one of my own dice. Well, that may not be so important with Gustavus up there. So I actually think I'm going to play that because I want to hold this event. I don't want to waste it. And rats can be very useful. That can prevent the Poles from moving if they come forward. So this is what we're going to play. I'm going to pop one of these guys off relatively quickly because I want to. Now this is going to be military by 1 level, get an infantry unit, or military DP. All right, military. You might want to do the military first, but I'll drop that into there. The bonus of the plus, because playing 2 cards at once seems like a horrible idea unless you really need a lot of points at once. And I'm going to use this first point for the siege. I only need 5s. I succeed twice, so that is effective. I take a space from the Russians to one of these. I could leave a garrison behind. That might not be a bad idea. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. Let's leave a garrison behind. That'll make it harder for the Russians to come around and be obnoxious. And then I move to here in order to get myself into position for a follow-up siege. And this one's a little harder. It's going to have a force with it. But I've really just kind of made it so the Poles are not going to win. They could have charged forward up there and grabbed one of those. But yeah, with the Swedes in place on both of them, the Poles are just going to clean up what their current problems are. I'm in kind of an annoying position. There isn't a lot you can do with funds. If you have a card that gives you something you can do with funds, you can. But I don't have one. But I do have this Boyar Duma, which gives me 2 fund markers or wrecks my economy. I can go above my maximum now, which is 3. But I don't foresee anything that's going to allow me to get rid of a fund, which is a shame because, hey, they're generally a good thing. I should have spent one, on discarding cards or something, which I didn't do. But it's hard. It's hard to internalize the knowledge that I'm going to be producing 2 per turn. But I don't want to wreck my economy. Again, I'm okay with where I'm at. I could march up and deal with the Swedes, but then I'm leaving things open for the Poles, and that doesn't seem like a great idea. So, we'll play this and grab a pair of funds. But I'm not happy about it because it's just, I'm probably going to have to throw one away at the end of the turn. A couple of sieges now. Without a control marker here, it's kind of annoying, but this is being sieged. This is also, of course, being sieged. Again, that might be an indication that there should be one there. But, again, there's not one in every location. There is in every fortified city and every fortress, one type or another. A couple of sieges went on, both partially successful. Turks here and Habsburgs. I moved my whatever people from Yassi, gotta look that up, Moldovans, down here because I had an extra point, and again, nothing I could do with 1 point. Played with my markers. I'd actually screwed up. This was over on the 5 DP side, so I give it a bonus and then moved it up again with a plus card. Ran into something that I had forgotten. I don't think it's come into play yet, but it may have. Which is, after land battle war experience, if you fight and both sides are at least 12 or more, the winner gets a movement to the right and the loser gets a movement to the left on the military DP production. What I was looking for was something related to that was, hey, are there any battles that are big enough that they give you a war fate? And I don't believe so. I think you just get them off of a surrender. And maybe other things as well give you occasionally. But that does bring to mind something that the game really should have, which is player aids that give you, a summation of what gives you what thing, what certain counters do, etc. There really needs to be a little bit more player aid. I know there's, a fair amount of components already in this game, and especially with the size of the decks of cards and whatnot. That's, hey, you're pushing the price, man. No question, but, eventually people might end up making such things, and then you print them out and you use them, but it's hard enough. It's hard enough. In fact, given that there are like, I don't know how many introductory scenarios in this, none of which, you know, you would really play except to introduce somebody to the system. I find it, you know, kind of that they're using a lot of pages of this. Now, maybe you shouldn't play until you've played all the introductory scenarios, but they're basically one-turn scenarios in the thing, you know. It's kind of like, hey, get yourself used to all the different big events or something along that line. Well, that makes sense, but it would also make sense, instead of all that, to have a little bit more player aid effect. Now, I don't know what's on the back of these sheets. I know that there's major event descriptions on them. I think they're just the historical background. That's what I recall. And since you can't access the back of those sheets while you're playing, they're not really useful for play information. Yeah, I'm at one of these hard positions with the Russians. You know, they're not really capable of defending themselves against the Swedes, perhaps. And they're not sure they want to. Again, for the reasons that Poland could have won. Well, now Poland probably can't win anymore. But if I move up, I open things up for a weaker Polish army that, you know, I'm actually a threat to. I have 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 strength points, just short of that amount, to, that's B, 7, 11, right? They have better leadership, but it would be a fair fight. I don't feel like the Swedes would be a fair fight, right? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. But I also kind of don't feel like I should just be spending my other cards. There's always this one. Yeah, I don't really want to trigger this, but this would be a good sink for my cards. Other options that I have, fiddle around with the Cossacks. Yeah, I'm not going to win that fight. I've got to make it so that Poland has less cards than me, because it's really a duel between the two of us. And yeah, what else could I do? Well, I can certainly sink a lot of points into this, but that seems a little weird. This is not a bad card for an event. Choose any one superpower and move its economy DP by 3 boxes to the right. Okay, but I can play this card for 2 points plus moving a DP marker, the way I read things. I think I'll play this simply because I feel like I'm trying to waste time with the Russians. I'm hoping that something happens, something changes that either lets me move into here and start capturing territory or whatever. But unfortunately, it would be perfectly reasonable for the Poles to move around, collecting up their stuff, and ignore me and just not engage. Look, it's the Ottomans and they have no cards already. Something, but I'm looking at the Austrians and I'm like, wow, that kind of sucks that the Ottomans have no cards, because that means Bucharest is still not under a control marker, so I can't kind of seize it if I could have, and it means the Austrians can't win this turn. Which, you know, I've got this, hey, bribe in a city, I could play that. That would be a useful card. Buy funds with my big 3-point cards and make up for it. The $2 would actually just buy me the city, which is kind of neat. But what I was meaning to mention that I think I forgot completely was I did take a look at Here I Stand, and it does have a very, very similar diplomatic system to this. I also looked at the rules to it, and yeah, they're fairly larger. They're significantly larger than whatever is explained here, and fairly ironclad, you know. I I did not look up to see what happens with control markers in it. And unfortunately, it's in a box. The way I store my war games, it's in a box on the lower end. I've got 2 boxes high. And so there's enough pressure that it's kind of hard to get in and out. With the armored GMT boxes, that probably isn't too big a deal. But yeah, I mean, there's just so many questions. I could look at the rules of Here I Stand and try to apply the rules to that game to come up with my answers for this game, and probably come out a lot more successfully than trying to deal with the rules for this game itself. Now, that's the opposite of what normally the CDGs are, which is they all have little weird differences that are significant enough that, like, unless you're looking at something like Napoleonic Wars, Kutuzov, and Wellington, that are all designed by the same person, and basically they lifted the system. He lifted the system from Napoleonic Wars and used the same movement in combat and whatever. But usually each designer comes up with their own way of doing things that it makes it a very, it actually is one of the difficulties with CDGs, is that they all look kind of the same, and then they all have different mechanisms for operating. But this one, given that it does have its heritage in those 2 games, I would be tempted, since it looks like the diplomacy was lifted there, to just hold cloth, say, hey, I should play Here I Stand first, because it's been at least 10 years, I think. Yeah, no, I played it a couple of times at the cons. But that doesn't count. Opposed play, it just, you don't remember as much usually. And you certainly don't think as hard. But the, just to refresh myself on that game, and then come in with this saying, the only way that you know how this game works is to know those games, because the rules for this are not sufficient. I still don't think it would be sufficient, because there's so many places. A lot of the rough edges are in the stuff that's not similar, Anyway, I'm having a tough time making my decision here whether I want to siege. There's not really much else I can do, so the idea of trying to fire off something with less points makes some sense. But the problem is, these cards are 2-point cards. Unless I get double success, I will be actually burning a point, because I've got nowhere to put 1 point. Well, I do. This thing could move around. I guess. The various little nations. Oh, wait. Jesus. So one thing that pisses me off is these little flags don't match. So this is no, is that the... Oh, jeez. One of them is the Cossacks. Yeah, I don't actually think that I can control anything with this guy. I don't know which country he is anymore. So that's the Moldovans. And I don't know if these are Moldovans or not, this Kamchatsky. So that's Moldova. Now, this is this darker color. This may be the Cossacks. I don't know who this is. Oh, he kind of just doesn't exist. But whoever he is, Grazi the Second Girij is dead. So I should probably put him away. I was moving these with the intention of taking this, but I don't think I can take it. Now, here's the thing. Grabbing control of stuff is one of the actions. And again, it sort of happens during movement, but I don't know if that's where it is. It's somewhere in the big 6.9. Let's take a look here. It'll be here. Control of a city, 6938. So it is under the movement and combat stuff. Or is that just combat? 692 is cards, 6931 is movement, 6938 is after sieges. 693 seems to be about all the different kinds of combat. Control of the city, superpower war, army of the superpower or allied minor state moves into the city in an operation point. Religion has to be constrained. Okay, so yeah, I can take this and I can take it for the Habsburgs. It doesn't have to connect to anything. So I guess I'll move there. But now I'm back up to the other end of things. The Poles spent to do some movement and clean things up. They spent a big 3-point card. Don't like to do that. Just don't feel like I have much choice given the cards that I have. Green may be the Tatters. I don't have any way to tell easily unless there's a scenario that has them on it. So we got them there. Let's look at one of these others. Okay, there's Boris. That's Russian. That's what it should be. Nothing else there. I was trying to figure out who that belongs to. Okay, here he is. Yeah. So those are Tatar leaders. And I don't think they're on the board yet. If the Tatars are brought in with all their forces, it would come in. These are there just so that you can raid, I guess. Let's see if they're at war in this scenario. It's hard to find where the scenario begins. Swedish Deluge, I think that's this. I don't know. I can't see where they're at war or controlled by anyone or anything. It's probably able to be figured out. By something. Like if I looked at the whole thing. Control. Okay, no. That's Tsardom, not Tatars. Yeah, it looks like who controls them isn't specified. And so normally they would be controlled only by the Ottomans, I think. Are the Ottomans in this game? Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't see them. I don't think they're in the play, but the Tatars are, and I see no rules referring to them. Limited play, number of players. Yeah, so now I gotta look up. I mean, it's like, yeah, it has no fucking effect on my situation, but I gotta look it up because I don't understand. Yeah, so only the Ottomans get to use the Tatars, but they seem to have a big army and forces in the scenario where the Ottomans aren't in it. I'm just gonna slap my head and I mean, there's just so much like this. Little things like that, but they bug me. I see them and they bug me. All right, I'll try to get one more card play before I go upstairs. 5 hours is a long fucking time, man. It's a long time when I'm not fixated on watching videos and playing my computer game and whatnot, or when I'm not at work or whatever. It seems to fly by normally. I'm like, oh, fuck, it's 4 in the morning. What the hell happened? I meant to play some of my game. Yeah. Observation stuff. And this has to do with the 10-year turns, but in the opposite direction. So this card that I've been holding on to and considering using, place these units on an empty space adjacent to Krakow or Warsaw, and controlled by the Polish-Lithuanian. Put a rebellion on it. Again, it doesn't tell you what to do if they don't have those forces. I think you don't get the excess, so that could be problematic. But who knows? The rebellious army must be defeated in land battle. If it stay on the board, stays. Until the end of the current game turn, no. Yeah, until the end of the current game turn, that is a comma there. I can't really see very well. Domestic policy of Polish Lithuanian Commonwealth is reduced by 1 level, and the ruler's card is flipped to a weakened side. Now, the Swedes could hold this till the last card that they want to play, and really kind of just jump in and force the Swedes to deal, or the Poles to deal with something late in the turn when maybe they don't have much capability left. Good, bad, I don't know, but that's kind of how I expect, you to be able to start wars late in the sequence and end them during the sequence too, because again, seasons, Anyway, so the Swedes had a fairly successful siege, killed 2 of the enemy units using a card that gives you a fund. I don't like not using that for the funds, but I got a 3-pointer to put there. I'm going to be awash in funds, so maybe that's okay. The Russians, I'm playing the exploration and colonization of Asia. The reason is I just feel like I'm stuck. There's nothing I can do. I may end up really regretting this. I'm at war with 2 powers, and this is when I choose to do it. But again, I'm feeling like I'm throwing cards away. Of course, the Swedes could march down and take Moscow, and then I'm in a whole shitload of trouble if they decide to do that, where I have to surrender. This could be a very, very bad turn for everyone except Sweden and the Habsburgs. The game is a very bad game for the Ottomans right now. They got hosed and are kind of stuck. I don't remember ever getting stuck in such a bad position in either of the other games. Sort of Rome, maybe a little bit more. But I don't think it was possible to get knocked down to 0 as any of the powers, where you get no cards, except your freebies. Played out their siege, and then they captured this space. Now, unlike these other powers that do have control marker, well, Frederick William, no, that's fine. This Gabriel guy is this. That's Transylvania, and I don't know why, you need counters for them. It's probably on a card or something that you need them for it. But yeah, most of the miners aren't going to capture stuff. The Danes can. That makes sense. The Cossacks, I don't understand their need for them and what the implications are. Like, are you creating not your country? But by taking this, seems like a good idea to take territory, right? Well, not if it's not religiously aligned with you. And I'm actually reducing the chances of the Turks having problems with that religious space and increasing my own problems. I shouldn't have done it, but I don't know what to do with my points. I got no way to bank them or do anything with them. I got no units that I can build with 1 point. The Poles have managed to clear up the last of their religious unrest, whatever it is. I think that's what it's called. Is it unrest, or is it called revolt? That's army rebellion, so it may be revolt. Revolt, yeah, okay. They still have a fair-sized hand, 4 cards, but Russia is not small either. Russia has a huge hand. And might be able to take advantage if the Poles are out of cards. Remember, I will let them come back in if they're reserving a card, which they may. And the Swedes have a fairly large hand as well. But I can... the Russians can probably outlast either of them. Why are the Russians so good? They've gotten this up. They have a fair number of spaces. I don't know why they're ahead of the Poles. Oh, I mean, the Poles had to play a reaction card or something, but I don't think so. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to this, but whatever. All right, that's it for a bit. But we're almost through the turn, which isn't too bad. I wish I could get through a turn a day. That feels like about the right pace for me in this. But I'm not able to devote my attention to anything that much anymore, right now at least. Maybe if I get back to work and stop playing this stupid game, but nobody hires me. Election night, and it's always a disappointment for me no matter what, I think. Set me back. I didn't get to play any yesterday, but I also had a lot of my video game in the middle of a clan war type thing that you have to be active on. So the Swedes just succeeded in their second siege in Russian territory, cutting the Russians down worse and worse. And I started looking for the diplomacy rules for, hey, how is Russia going to be able to sue for peace on this? Because they can't afford, to be back a couple of spaces. Once you're in a bad shape, you do have to sue for peace because you won't get your cards. But as I was doing that, I ran into a rule under the General Rules section. Now, it's not. It's General Rules for minor states. I forgot this existed, though, but I vaguely remembered the rule and couldn't find it. So, the first thing, and this is troubling, the capital of each minor state must be occupied by one infantry unit the whole of gameplay. The unit cannot move. Okay. That may not be possible because it might have been besieged and destroyed that way, and now what? Do I have to make efforts to try to get units there? I don't know. But I assume while it's at peace, it will get a new unit recuperated. If minor state is at war against superpower, all available combat units are placed immediately on capital city space. Exception for Denmark, who places their units elsewhere. If minor state is at war against superpower, different superpower can join the conflict. That's the thing I was looking for. To use this opportunity, player controlling joining superpower must play event diplomacy card. From that moment to the end of the current game turn, the player uses the minor state's combat units as his or her own. Oh, so the alliance actually fails after a turn. I'm not sure what that means in terms of these. But, yeah, I just don't know. Okay. During commanders changing, players must place full-strength infantry unit as garrison on capital of the minor if it's not controlled by any superpower. That covers the issue I was looking at. Place on the Baltic Sea all Danish naval units, maximum of 3. Place 3 tatter units on Crappy. Place all available commanders on corresponding capitals or with their armies. Well, actually, this happens during commanders changing. Yeah, that works fine. Okay. Doesn't handle whether... It doesn't seem to imply anything about getting a control mark or anything like that for an ally. Was that an issue? Yeah, that was an issue here. And by the way, the Turks do not own that. That's under siege, and the siege is going to fail because there's no Turkish cards left. So it doesn't answer any of my questions. That's the place that I didn't see that I wanted to look at. Well, it answers one question, which is how a superpower can take control of a minor, which essentially they have to play a diplomacy card to do that. That's a big expense. The minor had better be pretty potent for that to be valuable. Anyway, I was looking for the forced peace. I was just looking for myself, but I figure since I'm on here, superpower which forces peace can retake national provinces. For each controlled fortified city which is given back, they give, yeah. So you'd be giving permanent victory points in exchange for Just giving back the winning superpower gains 1 victory point. Now this isn't handed over. It's just a victory point for winning the war. 3 fun markers. You can. So it's kind of weird. You can essentially give glory, but you're not giving anything up. Or you can sue for peace. That doesn't really feel. Oh no, you receive. Yeah, for each given back city or fortified city, the war winner receives a fun marker. Yeah, so this is weird. I think. Yeah. Oh, that's right. You have to pay reparations of 1 fund marker per city to get them back. That's my way of addressing this, so that there are some sort of reparations. So every city or fortified city, for each given back city or fortified city, there's nothing about giving back other spaces. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, very obviously, if they're right on the border like they are with the Swedes, this is no big deal. But if I were to capture something like this with Sweden and didn't take any of these Polish spaces, I would need a path down there. And for each given back, oh, city or fortified city. Good enough, good enough. Yeah, yeah. So each space that the control changes back to, you have to pay a fund marker. Each fortified city given back, a victory point marker goes to the winner unless you pay 3 fund markers in addition to the 1 that you have to pay for the space. So good luck with that. Now Russia actually has enough money to pay for its spaces. However, they're not going to have, if I'm right, very many cards next turn no matter what, because negotiations happens down here, funds and card drawing, these happen here. I also won't have all these funds. I have 4. I'm only allowed to hold on to 3, so the rest just would evaporate, I guess. All right, and I'm doing that. I'm trying to figure that out to see, hey, can the Russians just buy their way out of the war? And the answer is yes. I knew this before, but I haven't done it, so it didn't sink in very well. With that, I found a reaction card that I should have played. Again, reaction cards are very problematic for me, not just because of solo play, but I found a reaction card, and we're going to negate that siege situation. Force the Swedes another turn. So that actually takes a little bit of pressure off. The Swedes are running low in cards, whereas the Russians have a whole shitload of cards right now. Oh boy, now I'm running into the can't find where the rule is problem in this rule book. And again, yes, if it were an electronic copy, you know, the best of both worlds seems to be a tablet, right? I bought one, it just never worked for me. And now it just doesn't work. But yeah, you know, the ability to search electronically through paper would be kind of cool. So, you know what I actually might work is just a phone or something, and I could actually hook that up. Search, find out the page something is on, and then refer to that in the paper rule book or a tablet or something. I hate reading from electronic devices, but I was looking for the rules on expanding here. Now, there's a couple of places. First of all, there's a lot of special rules here, but these are having to do with other nations and their troops. That's not where this is going to be. So then I flip back, because I know there's something else which has to do with the tracks that the various countries have, like the Iron Track. And I have the rules on the Cossack track here. I don't seem to have the rules on the colonization, which leads me to the, okay, where the hell is that gonna be? Like, I know there are rules on this. I can't imagine where else they fucking could be. Now I'm in the playing cards, which, you know, doesn't really fit. And they're in the victory rolls. Now, the Union of Brest would also be one of these, right? That's actually handled elsewhere, back in the place that I looked before. So there's, you know, there's not even a conformance with, like, where they decided to put things. There's no alignment there. I gotta swap batteries so that I can look at this. Again, you know, I have this vain thought that I'm gonna come down and I'm gonna finish the turn up. I'm gonna get through one round of cards and be exhausted by it. Okay, so here, colonize. To start the process, I play the event card, which I did. In the next impulses, I can do building. Exploration of Asia enables movement of the marker, according to pointing arrows, into the next box. When you conduct building colony, you flip the counter on the back side and you get victory points. Now, first of all, there are places with zeros. Do I build colonies there or not? I don't know. The two sides look exactly the same. What's up with that? And do I have to build the colony to push things forward? I think so. Anyway, I think I'll throw this because it cost me a 3-point card to move the marker. So the answers that I'm coming with are, first of all, there's no colony to be built there. There's no victory points. Secondly, I don't know about marking things. Maybe I'll use one of these to mark things. And you must colonize in order to do things. So you can't push forward without colonizing. If you've ever played EU, that is actually pretty much the case. Is it absolutely? I think so. I think so, on the board game. So, you know, I'll follow my understanding from that. But, yep. And we can slip down because there are no Ottomans. Turks finished their attack here. Have no capacity to get the final victory marker because the Turks failed to siege Bucharest. It's still allied with me, and whatever. By taking this, that doesn't, to me, seem to have any implication on these guys. Now, if we look at the minor countries rules, you know, am I forced into peace or something? I didn't see anything that seemed to indicate that. All right, we got to look for general rules. Yeah. Okay, so they're not controlled by a superpower. Yeah. So that remains there. And to me, that means that you can liberate a territory and it will destroy the country at the end of the turn. You don't liberate it. You can conquer from someone else and just the army will fall apart at the end of the turn because it's got nowhere to go. Okay. So we are going to go back and do another run. What else happened? The Poles played their war taxes card just for no effect. That's the deal with their cards. Now, I got to think of whether or not I want to fight the Russians. I still haven't made my mind up on that. Or if I want to, like, start converting areas to Catholicism, which is another reasonable possibility. I mean, if the Russians are going to start doing exploration of Siberia while we're at war, hey, what the hell? Siege did succeed. No cards to prevent it. Spent a big card, the Demetrius card. It's useless now except as ops point card, which is okay. There was something about you have to choose whether or not you want to do the Demetrians, but I think that was for Poland, not for Sweden. Because you can't pick it as your first card, but that's okay. You can pick it. Oh, here. In second game turn, use opportunity and join Demetrians. Yeah, but I'm not really sure how valuable that is. Mark in diplomacy table, war between Sweden and Russia, and war between Sweden and Poland, Lithuania. That doesn't sound wise. I mean, first of all, I was already at war with Russia, so if that's my goal, screw it, you know. It's a little cheaper than declaring war on one country. That's all I can see. But it gets you to war with two countries, which doesn't sound good. And doing it in turn 2 also doesn't sound good. Sweden is not it's not at power at that point. And Poland is. So as advice, it sounds horrible. Regretting the war taxes card? Because I'm looking at the polls and I'm like, so I got a 3-point card. I could spend this to move into here, fight a battle. Now, I can't use the points on siege at that point. So then I have 2 more points that I can use for other stuff. And I have Commander's Disease, which I could play against their leader, and I have a combat card that I kind of like. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play I am going to make the attack. I'm going to play the Commander's Disease, and I'm going to march in, and we will see if the Russians have anything to do about this. That will put me in the same position as the Holy Roman Empire in terms of being close to victory. The difference being Sweden can actually declare war on Poland. And, it's an expensive war. Nah, it's not bad. It's only 3 points. And start an issue. There really isn't anyone except Poland who can stop the Austrians from winning. On to battle. The Russians have no cards to react to the movement itself, and this defeatism card is going to prevent them from being able to play any cards to actually... Oh, can I possibly win this? No. What am I doing? This is idiotic. So... I don't have enough points and cards to be able to fight twice. And that's a big deal because there is a full garrison there conceivably, which means I would have to get 3 hits on it. The most I can get is 2. So I'm not going to take the city, which to me means I figure out something else to do with my polls. Plus card, which allows me to play with tracks. And currently my military is maxed out. My card draws are not, but I also have the Union of Brest that I might want to be banking points into. Instead, however, I am going to bank all my points into cards. I don't get a bonus for the plus because I used all the cards that way. All right, we're going to just keep rolling because I think we can make it through the turn, even with my defeatism of a moment ago. Mark the actual victory point. But how I'm marking that it's prepared to go forward because the 2 sides of the counter are exactly the same is to put a little thing like this on there for now to indicate that I built a colony there. And now I can move forward. I have another 2+. No, threes to move forward, 2s to build colonies, right? Exploration is 3, building a colony is 2. Seems like the opposite, right? Not going to be able to put Cossacks under control. Don't want to just hold it. Do I? I don't know if I want to reshuffle. That's, it's like you got to paw through your deck and see, hey, how are my points? Are there cards that I want in there? I hate that kind of deck manipulation stuff that comes with a number of CDGs, and it's sure showing up in this one. not so much in terms of most of the events that are going to take cards out of the game are cards you really want in your deck, right? But the reshuffle is like, you have to look at what you're putting back in, and that can be a complex decision. So for someone it was a big deal, like they needed the ability to end a war or something, I don't know. But they needed a pair of cards. Oh no, it was something else. It's a pair of connected events. The Holy Roman Emperor, the 30 Years' War. Yeah, being able to trigger that in time required a reshuffle this turn, and all kind of stuff like that. Knowing that kind of thing, knowing what you have to juggle and being able to figure that out, but also pawing through your deck regularly to see, hey, is this the card I want to play? Or is this, or this, right? Because maybe I want the Cossacks under control. I don't think I'm going to have the money to do that. By money, I mean card points to do that, because I have to boost this 3 times without Poland answering. And Poland's still in pretty good shape. And I can always buy that back with funds. I'm having trouble figuring out something I can use my funds for in the midst of a turn. I don't have an answer right now, which is kind of interesting. Okay. There was something that was on my mind. My motoring of my mouth was... yeah, I need to look at the fucking cards. I guess that's what I gotta do. But the reason that's annoying, okay, I don't mind a game like Dominion, that is a card, a deck manipulation game. That's what it's about. It doesn't try to pretend to be realistic or anything. I think it's a fun game, It's great. I don't like importing that kind of mechanism in any sense of the word into something that's really supposedly trying to provide a somewhat more, although certainly very, very abstracted, historical view of what is going on. And, much as I love Here I Stand, and Sword of Rome is even more at pain for this, they're really kind of more historically themed games. But some of it has to do with that mechanism. Some of it has to do with the very high level that they look at things. It's kind of like a Britannia, right? Where it's like, okay, it's just, there's not enough detail to really be able to judge how historically accurate the game ends up being. How much does it really, how much do you learn about the subject matter through the game? And the types of decision processes. Almost nothing. Almost nothing. The decision processes in this are more to do with the cards, but I don't want the game to focus this much on the cards where I have to look at that. As a new player, I don't know what the balance is. The numbers look fairly low. There's a lot of 2 pluses in there, though. Pluses, by the way that I'm interpreting the rules, are kind of cool. They allow you to play with this kind of shit. I just don't know. I think my answer is I'm not going to need this card in the near future, so I'll play that. That means I'll move this, and I'll take this off the board. Now, I had better be at, let's see. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I forgot to play with victory points. That's what happened. Okay. So the Russians gained a victory point by building Tomsk. And I think I marked that down, but I'm not sure. So I should be at 5, which means I probably didn't do it. 1, 2, 3, 4 for the 2 things that are here. Meanwhile, this should be at 6 up here. I don't think there are any additional victory points there. Wow. I wonder how Sweden gets its victory points other than by controlling all of the Baltic. Let's look at the end of the game rules. We're done with the Russian turn, so I'll just shift down there. But I feel kind of like, wow, I don't know if Sweden can join a lot of points. Now, 5 points is a big bonus. Plus, you win wars with your big Gustavus, and you might be banking a lot of points. So that could be what we're looking at here. I don't see any bonus points for the Swedes. Here's one. One for controlling Karlskrona and one for Malmo. And those are the areas that I have a game on this. Trying to remember what it is. It's a Swedish-Danish war that happened, and I have musket and pike scenarios from it. It's one of the later sets of the musket and pike, so it's like those just don't feel as good to me somehow. Like they've started getting too much terrain on the board and everything, and that makes maneuvering the units just a pain in the ass. But I don't remember which set it was, and I would be able to look if I was playing upstairs where all the war games are, but I'm here in the non-wargaming section. Okay, battery is almost dead, which means I'm too long-winded as usual. So let's just finish things up. Fairly easy. Holy Roman Empire and Poles both were going to pass this turn, which means we go back. I think the Swedes are close to passing. 2 cards, I can hold 3. I don't see much I want to do, so I'm going to turn that to indicate that they're passing, which means last but not least, we're on Russia. And Russia has a fair number of cards left, and I'm only allowed to keep 1. So we'll keep building our... we could go beat up something, you know. A 3 move gets us up there, but we could get intercepted. I just don't know. So I'm going to play this and bonus this and build... Oh, no. Shit. There's no colony there. Okay, so I don't play that. I don't bonus that. I assume that I don't want to do colonies for areas where there's no colony, like no victory points. Again, not clear. So I get to play a 3-point card. All right, I gotta think if I want to launch an attack. I certainly don't want to launch an attack on the Poles. There's absolutely nothing to gain from fighting them. And the Swedes, man, fighting Gustavus sounds like a horrible idea without any combat cards. And he's got a reserved card or 2. At least I pushed on further with exploration. Let me leave this marked with the 0 so that I know I don't have to build anything there. I've got 2 cards. I could push forward into here, grab another victory point. I could march up there and take a chance at... try to find the rules for interception. At interception, that's basically a 5 out of 6 chance that the Swedes will attack us. I looked at them. They have bigger numbers. They won't suffer attrition for intercepting for some reason, which feels really weird. I'm not going to be able to stand in a fight against them. So the other option is move this forward. Don't grab the victory point, because then I only have to play this once more and play, what, 7 points of cards to get the 2 things. And hold on to this 2+ card. I could play the 2+ card to kill the garrison there, which, you know, does something, but not much. I'm going to be surrendering next turn, giving Sweden a boatload of points. So I just don't know. Part of me says use the 2+ card, take the bonus, you know, here, and maybe build some troops. Don't want to build any of these because they'll die. Well, actually, no. I could build one safely. I have a garrison here, I take it, yeah. The garrison here is not of the type that dies, so that would be not entirely useless. I think I'll hold on to this card. This is a useful card. I'll play this as the 2+. Now, I don't think I'm going to be fighting much, but we'll see. My military capabilities are so shitty, but I want to get my cards up, right, so I can do things. So then that 2 points, I take 1, 2, and I will certainly build this here. It's my garrison. The rest of this force, I could actually build it with Force A, which is pretty big, but I want to cover Moscow, I guess. I don't know. I got to think about that. I decided to build all my troops here, except for the garrison point. The reason for that is I only have one leader next turn. Same this turn, but yeah. So having additional forces doesn't make a lot of sense. And that's going to be the end. Everybody passes, including the Russians, keeping a card. And then we go to wherever. Section 6, all the rules of the game. And look to see what we're doing. So armies return, remove auxiliary markers. I don't think we have any left. Gotta make sure I don't have like a rebellion on an army that I wasn't paying attention to. And then the domestic policy impact. So a little bit of bookkeeping, and then this will go up. I'll be back after the bookkeeping. We're back at the, hey, we've got problems stage of the game, which happens all too often, which is, hey, Bucharest here, owned by, damned if I remember who, Moldova, one of them. Bucharest is Wallachia. Okay, so this is the ambitions of Michael the Brave. This is what triggered it back on turn 1. Wallachia breaks vassal subjugation. Place Commander Michael and all Wallachian units. Wallachia is now at war against the Ottomans. Moreover, you must apply Special Rule 2. Roman player controls this army as his or her own, Holy Roman. Okay, so Moldova and Transylvania become controlled by the Holy Roman Empire. It doesn't indicate till end of turn or anything like that. It is in an alliance with them. Alliance is not really defined with minors. From what I recall. Let's look back at the rule that told me that I could take control of a minor, which, damned if I remember, but I think it's under general rules somewhere. Different superpowers can join the... This doesn't indicate anything about becoming an ally, right? There are no rules about alliance. It might be what is meant. These are one turn. Whatever happens there when you take control of a minor's units. Right, I'm afraid I ran out of memory on my camera. I'm using the internal memory because things go weird. Like, I either get one or the other, and it seems random whether or not. Like, the chip has to be in either case, or else the camera doesn't work. But sometimes the chip puts me on this relatively large internal memory on the camera that I can't access otherwise. And sometimes it gives me the chip. And I prefer the internal memory for various reasons, but it is much, much smaller than the memory card that I'm using. Which may be part of the advantage. My videos are fucking long enough as it is. Okay, so I was in the midst of trying to figure out resolutions to something or other. Yes, yeah. So this card does not say anything about allying, right? It says Wallachia is war with the Ottomans, and you can apply special rule number 2. Now, special rule number 2 deals with Moldova and Transylvania. Special thing that if Moldova goes over, which it did, I screwed up here. The Ottomans should have gotten this Zamoyski, who was a Polish leader, still is a Polish leader, over here. Shouldn't be on the board anymore. He's turn 1 and 2. Oh boy. Reading the turns on these guys is hard. I don't know why I missed that. But clearly I would have used this guy instead of him. But yeah, he should have converted over to an Ottoman ruler, an Ottoman leader, which for one turn, I guess, along with the Polish army. No, wait. So this fucking sucks. So they give Moldova here, 1, 2, or 3 means they break, blah, blah, blah. Transylvania, and then under Transylvania, they have the if Moldova. And I think I just skipped that, trying to run through things, and thought Transylvania. Transylvania, which is the orange one, did not break. And I was kind of expecting, Transylvania to have the leader, not Moldova, because Transylvania actually did quite a bit against the Ottomans during this period. So, another fuck up there. But none of this has anything to do. These guys turn into allies, but not at war. And what an alliance with a minor means isn't defined anywhere. And there's nothing else here. Oh, here we go. John Zamoyska was unwilling to Habsburg's influence in Balkan region. As hetman, he used his independence. So he ends up, I guess, I don't know what hospodars are. Moldova and Wallachia were set hospodars dependent on Commonwealth and temporarily accepted by the Ottoman Empire. I don't know what the hell that means. But anyway, we can deal with that failure. But what I'm worried about here is that the ally rules are a stand-in term for the minor state general rules, not numbered within, like general rules is just 4.1. Each of these should have their own so that you could refer to it, and say, well, remember, this is an alliance as defined here, except it's not defined as an alliance or anything like that. There is, if minor state is at war with superpower, different superpower can join the conflict. From that moment to the end of the current turn, the player uses minor state's combat units as his or her own. Is that the same as alliance? If it is, then these all went neutral at the end of turn 1 as well. Even if these rules were as well written as possible, the number of special cases and chromie type aspects to them would make this a very, very hard game to play. It would still be probably outside of what I would consider the reasonable sort of tourney type fun play that Here I Stand and Sword of Rome have. Now, I argue that Virgin Queen is also outside of that, but I think some people do play Virgin Queen in that sort of way, where they play it a lot and, get really used to it. But my feeling with that tourney style play is that, if a game is good, and Here I Stand and probably Virgin Queen are both good games, I would guess, because people do play Virgin Queen. I'm just not that hooked on it. You're going to capture a small segment of people who are really, really devoted to that game and who play it heavily and who know it, you know. But what you're going to have trouble getting with the Virgin Queen situation, and certainly with this, is that more general or more generalist player who is like, yeah, I remember having fun with that. Not, oh, wow, yeah, I felt like, you know, it was kind of similar, but it just had so much crap that I couldn't remember it all. I couldn't keep it all in mind. You know, it's one thing to be able to have, anyway. For this game, it would be, I think, more in that latter type of mechanism. All right. I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do about this, because I've been playing it one way, which is as a, you know, as if this alliance persisted, because there was nothing to break the alliance. But in 10-year terms, it is reasonable that they would just expire. There is no definition for alliance, but I sort of feel like if I were doing this again, I would say, hey, this rule, whatever applies here, applies to the Michael card, which doesn't even say you control anyone controls the troops. See, the problem with the Michael card is they are at war with the Ottomans. The others are not. They're in alliance with the Habsburgs, which means if the Habsburgs are at war, I guess you can use them. I just, you know, again, I'm in a position where I'm like, the rules don't tell me enough. I've been playing it one way. I think the rules imply a different way when I use my best argument to it. But I don't know. Just like I don't know if the Austrians already won the game. I guess I just keep blundering through, you know, with kind of the way I've been playing it, because that's been what's, you know. But I don't fucking know. I really don't fucking know. You know, because, like, I feel kind of bad attacking an ally, right? Although I think I can. But that would actually get rid of that feeling bad if the alliance expires at the end of the turn. If this is no longer at war with anyone, and the Ottomans would have to declare war on it. Now, if they do declare war, this is what's fucked up, is they're not willing to accept Habsburg. I gotta swap batteries. Really low on battery juice, and it wasn't charging for as long as it should have been, even within the tiny time. But they wouldn't be willing to accept Habsburg troops helping them without taking advantage of general rules, which says player controlling joining superpower. Okay, minor status at war against superpower. Different superpower can join the conflict. To use this, they have to play a diplomacy card. You need a diplomacy card to come to the aid of a minor. That feels like such bullshit. Like, that feels so totally wrong. In the case of, in any of the cases, to tell you the truth. Like, yeah, it makes sense in taking an example that's not in this game, but in the example of, say, France supporting Sweden with money to bring Sweden into a war or something like that, it makes sense that a diplomacy card is required there. But I have the feeling that Michael the Brave goes, because he's brave indeed, goes against the Ottomans and hopes maybe the Habsburgs have a diplomacy card and will help him. But is pretty much wiped out. And other people won't. I gotta stop. I got no battery. So, yeah, I have none on either of my batteries. I got a backup, but I can't use it for this. So, yeah, I'll be back to finish up this turn. Half of it's up on my computer. Oh, well, 2 hours is up on my computer, and I got like 5 minutes left, but whatever. As I follow the withdrawal of armies to their home bases, I notice, the special rules regarding minors are not mentioned, not referenced. This is one of the more difficult things that rules should really have. Even good rule sets sometimes fuck stuff like this up because they don't want to mention something too many times. So it's mentioned earlier under Rule 4.1, General Rules. But there should be a reference to that. Hey, note that minors, have their forces, or note this. Just note that rule. Although that would be less than ideal, to tell you the truth, because 4.1 is like the 6.10 or whatever, a fairly large section, right? It's not a specific rule that you can refer to. It would be better if they broke the rules up more. It would also be better if they broke up Section 6, which is all the rules of the game, Basically, all the things that aren't Chrome are in Section 6, which is just ridiculous in my view, but I've already harped about that enough. I'm trying to figure out what to do with the Habsburgs. I still haven't come to an answer, in my own mind, what I'm doing about these wars. Part of me says, you know what? These countries have achieved their independence. But they haven't. So here's the thing. 10 years go by, I've been supporting this army, okay? Let's assume that I have to play that diplomacy because the army's been supported all this time. In order to maintain my support for it, even though I'm at war with the Ottomans, this is the crux of it. I am at war with their enemy, and they won't accept my support, and I have to draw a diplomacy card basically every turn, and there's not that many of them, in order to maintain this alliance. Otherwise, I'll have them in between me and the Ottomans and may have to declare war on them and destroy them, because otherwise they become a buffer to the Ottomans that I can't deal with. This is what's problematic. My feeling is, if you are allied with a minor and it's hard to express this, but if you're allied with a minor and at war with the minor's opponent, you can maintain that situation. But it's hard to tell because they're fucking 10-year turns. If they were 1-year turns, definitely, But with 10-year turns, it's like, well, who the hell knows what happens in all that time? And, but on the other hand, every decade, something really weird is going to shake up the world, and some stuff that's hard to explain under any conditions becomes even worse because it happens only every 10 years, right? Every 10 years, everybody immediately reassesses all their diplomatic, all their political considerations, and countries like whatever this is, Wallachia or whatever, are just cut loose and without any. So here's a little country at war with a fairly major opponent, and I'm guessing their army has to repatriate. Now, the rules for the repatriation for them are weird too. So general rules says if a minor state is at war, not when it declares war. No. If a minor state is at war against a superpower, all available combat units are placed immediately on combat city space. Now, that has to be becomes, because otherwise they would just keep teleporting there every time they use. So I'm going to take their damaged army and move it back here. The Austrians are not there, although I really don't know that it would repatriate there. Army D here are these guys. They have nowhere to go, so they're they're going to go away. And I'll try to figure out where the hell they go. Oh, let's get rid of this general here, who was too many turns on the board anyway. So yeah, Army D falls back to there. Army C, I'm guessing, has to go back here. Again, I'm not sure, because superpowers wouldn't have to, right? They're allowed to keep one army in play, and that's kind of the thing. Well, can my one army in play be these troops, stay with the Austrian army, and can my one army in play for these guys be these troops here? Does that apply to minors? I don't know. You know, I've played it that way before, so let's keep it that way. Let's not change things. I don't know what happens if I declare war on them with Austria, though, in that situation, right? That's the problematic thing. But likewise, when I was here. So, yeah, I just don't know. We'll be making up rules regularly, it seems. We've had to anyway. Army A doesn't even exist anymore. So, yeah, I don't know. I have taken care of all of the actions on turn 3. So we're now on turn 4. I feel like even though the game is so, the game itself is so undeveloped that I've played an incredibly flawed. I always play flawed, plays. I always get something wrong, but I feel like I still have no idea what the rules are intended for in a lot of cases, and that I'm just making shit up. And in some cases, I'm pretty sure that I'm making shit up that I don't agree anymore that the rules support. So, for example, I think the rules require these two countries to break their alliance with the Habsburgs, but remain at war with the Ottomans. And that this country basically doesn't exist anymore. It could come back, but the fact that it doesn't exist means I think I'm going to get rid of that alliance. So I'm trying to use some sort of sense of reason as a layer in a way that I don't think the rules, the rules don't support this argument at all. But I'm using the sense of reason that, these two countries are at war with the Ottomans, and for them to, abandon the support of the Habsburgs, unless the Habsburgs play a diplomacy card, seems foolish. Now, it also seems really weird that these two countries, not this one, are the only ones that would have taken Habsburg support. So again, I've made shit up there as well. But I think I'm at the end of this one. I'll see if I can get enough steam up to play another turn. Starting this turn was just such a disappointment in finding out that, oh wow, I think the Habsburgs actually won the game in the first 2 turns of the game, but I'm not sure. And I'm growing less convinced of that, but I think the Habsburgs conquered this. I don't know, because I got to tell you, Wallachia, I think, conquered Belgrade. So, but, it was a situation where if the Habsburgs did actually conquer this back from the Ottomans, if the Ottomans took it and the Habsburgs took it back from them, I think they could have introduced ally, yeah, sorry, you're now my territory, and that would have generated a win. But otherwise, I don't know. And the idea that my assumption is that these do not become part of Habsburg territory. And in fact, if they do, those armies no longer exist. You've wiped out that country. But again, I'm making shit up, but that's shit that I think probably the rules should be, rather than however they're worded, which leaves this all up into a huge question. This is more of a, yeah, you could probably write them that way and it would be okay. No idea if this track is correct anymore. I hope so. It should be able to be recalculated, but I'm not positive. And I am going to load this one up. And, you know, at some point or another, people are going to say, at some point or another, almost everyone has already said, wow, I don't want to see this. The only people who are looking at it are seeing it to see me melt down or whatever. And, but yeah, I mean, again, this game is simply nowhere near ready for being, you know, produced and sold at this point. It shows some interesting promise. I like the situation in it, but the amount of development to make the number of Chromie type special cases get them all nailed down reasonably. This is going to be a much more rigorous rulebook and complex one than it is. And there are a lot of things to handle that would work better. You can't foist everything off on the cards and leave big gaping holes as to how to interpret what's going on. And they didn't. I mean, certainly some things were put in the rolls, but they're not sufficient to play the game. Yeah, even basic stuff like how the minor powers generally work is not well addressed. Rule 4.1 general rules notwithstanding. Yes, it's a sub-rule of minors. Okay, up it goes, whatever.